Hey, welcome back to Off Centre. Today I'm thinking we should have a long, hard look at a new poll that came out from Find Out Now just a couple of days ago, and it is pretty seismic. In essence, it puts Reform with a massive lead, with 31% of voters saying that they would vote for Reform in the next general election. Then you've got the Tories on about 20%, which is still a massive fall off, but it is slightly better, showing maybe some minute signs of improvement. Then you've got the Green Party that appears to have, in a massive political sea change on the left, overtaken Labour. It looks as though Zach Polanski's Green Party, which we'll look into later, has just gone and clinched the lead from Labour in the race to dominate the new British political left. And that is a big change. And then, of course, you've got the sad, sorry, desperate sight that is Labour. They're down on 14%. That is almost a record low for a government with recent polling. It's almost inconceivable that 18 months ago, anyone would have looked at Labour on like 42% in some polls to have completely collapsed in the most unbelievable way. It's funny, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying seeing this government do quite so badly, because it's nothing less than they deserve. But how is this going to impact Labour? And if something impacts Labour, it's going to impact the way that our country is run. That's just the nature of our democracy. So we'll look into why Labour is doing so terribly, although you already know. We'll look into how the Greens have begun to dominate the race, and we'll also look into the very obvious frontrunner, Reform UK. We should start with the big one, the elephant in the room, which is Reform and Reform's success. And that is quite unbelievable. I mean, 30% should be enough to get yourself a majority. Labour were on about 35-ish. That got them a supermajority. If Reform can boost those numbers from 31, maybe up to 35, 36, 37, they've got themselves a supermajority, secured in Parliament, ready for the next general election to push through their agenda. And that is huge for them. To have gone from one MP, basically no national media coverage, no real presence on major prime-time chat shows, no real presence on things like BBC Question Time. People were sort of forgetting slightly about Nigel Farage. No one even knew who Zia Youssef was 2 years ago. And now look where they are. It is an unbelievable job. And whether you like them or not, Reform, you've got to look at that and say that is an effective way to run a party. Big, bold messaging, going out on the campaign trail, speaking to people, getting on TV, getting involved with the people on both a national and deeply personal level is what works in a democracy like ours, and we should be grateful for that. And Reform have harnessed that, they've mastered that, and that's how they're doing so well in the polls. They're focusing in on issues of taxation and migration. They found their USP, which is deportations, and no one can mimic that. The Tories are trying to pathetically mimic what Reform are doing. They're desperately tagging a campaign of going, oh, me too, me too. And it's just lame. No one's buying it. No one believes what she's saying. And that's because the party's reputation has been completely shattered. It's gone. This 20%, it's not bad, but they are only capitalising off Labour's massive failures. Were Labour not doing so badly, you wouldn't even know the name of the Tories. You wouldn't even remember that they're a party that exists. You wouldn't know they had 120 MPs in the House of Commons. You would have forgotten about them already. Were Labour not doing quite so badly? When a government finds itself in such a record historical mess such as this, basically every form of opposition will capitalise, whether they're a total shambles like the Tories or a rather well-run effective organisation like Reform. Everyone will benefit from the suffering of the main party when they are doing quite such an appalling job in Parliament. And Reform they've got a really nice messaging strategy. They know what they're about. They have their USP. They understand how to get their message across to the public. They know what they're doing, which is a lot more than can be said for the Labour Party, as we all know at the moment. They are in absolute chaos, which is what we'll discuss next. So if you've been following politics at all, even like turning on your TV for a split second in the morning whilst you're drinking your coffee, you will understand that Labour are in a terrible state right now. We won't waste too much time going into it, because I'm sure you know. But this is a near record poll. We haven't seen polls this terrible in terms of government approval for 50 odd years, sometimes even 60, depending on which poll you're looking at. This is generationally poor form for a government. It is truly terrible. And it's because they're in shambles. There's massive infighting. Keir Starmer might not last very long, obviously. The budget's gone down terribly. They're being accused of lying left, right, and centre. It's a total disaster. No one trusts them. No one has confidence in them, not least the Labour backbench, which is why they're in such a terrible state. We won't waste any more time on it, but you know that a government that is quite so untrustworthy and, frankly, quite so appalling at keeping not only its own cabinet together, but its backbench and the country as a whole together, is not fit to govern. And it is only a matter of time before Keir Starmer is ousted and the entirety of the Labour regime collapses. And I can tell you now, we are almost certainly looking at the last ever Labour government. Then there's the other pretty big elephant in the room. And as we all know, British politics is a bit of a circus at the moment. You've got 5 or 6 major parties all vying for coverage and attention and votes and time in Parliament. They're all asking the Speaker for another question. And it's fun to watch. And it's nice to see who's coming out on top. I think Reform are doing a good job. I think maybe even the Conservatives capitalising a little bit, like I've said. But the Green Party is the massive insurgent force. Now, I mean, come on. 3 months ago, no one had ever heard of the Greens. They were a total laughingstock. They were in the obscurity and oblivion that is parties that poll below 7%. That's where they were. No one knew about them. And if they did know about them, they were a little bit of a circus act. They were sort of just clowns on the sidelines, chucking orange powder over them. You'd associate them with Extinction Rebellion and all the eco lunacy. And now, nothing's really changed in terms of messaging. They've just got someone relatively charismatic on board. Now, don't get me wrong. Zach Polanski is a lunatic idiot. He's the man who thinks he will go up to Putin. He said this. He said, we can speak to Putin and convince him to abandon his nuclear program in the same way that we will abandon ours. He wants us to throw away our deterrent, leave our biggest enemies like Russia and China completely armed to the teeth, and then go to them and say, oh, please, Mr. Putin, put your weapons down, please destroy them, as if that's going to work. It is easily the craziest assertion that any party leader has made in the last 30 years, bar none. It's funny, but it's also scary, because this man could be leader of the opposition if this polling trend continues. And that is terrifying. He's the same man who actually was a hypnotist in 2013, and a Sun journalist came to him and said, can you make my breasts larger using only my mind? And he said yes, and he spent 90 minutes trying to do it. He said that you can channel brain hormones to your breasts to enlarge them. This is what this man believes. He thinks he can get Putin to drop his weapons. He thinks you can make your breasts bigger with your mind. He doesn't know any real economists. If you saw him on the Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell podcast the other day, he was asked to name 3 economists, and he just blurted out 3 names of people that weren't at all economists. He confused deficit and debt. He confused everything. It was a convoluted mess. It was just gibberish that he was spewing out on this podcast. None of it made so much as a word of sense. This man is a disaster. This man is a lunatic. This man can be nowhere near the forefront of British politics, but somehow he's done it. And it's because Labour are doing so badly. People on the left are desperate for anything that isn't Labour. And if that means the lunatic who thinks that Putin will drop his nuclear weapons if you write him a friendly greeting card, then they will turn to him. Because at the moment, anything is better than Keir Starmer. And it is terrifying, obviously. But with a little bit of luck, the Greens will decimate Labour, and they will get into this massive left-wing infighting circle, this vicious circle that we've seen before. It's horrible, but it's good for us. If the Greens attack Labour and Labour attack Greens, then they'll have no time to attack people on the right, and the right will do well, as we've seen before. But if the Greens prevail and they do totally dominate Labour, which is what we're seeing at the moment, the Greens have gone from 7% to 18% in 2 months, and Labour have gone from 18% down to 14% in 2 months. They basically swap places. You've got the Greens usurping Labour. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? You make your mind up. I mean, if a general election were to happen today, and you're on the left, would you vote Labour or Green? Would you vote anyone just to get rid of Keir Starmer? If you're an ardent Reform supporter, Would you still support them? I mean, even if you're a conservative, would you vote for reform if it meant that the right wing would win? Is this the coalition that you back? Tell us in the comments. Until next time, enjoy.